Today, I thought I would retell a story about the death angel that I experienced. And then at the end, I wanted to talk about a couple of folklores and myths from both South Texas and Ireland. So, if you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and this is my new YouTube channel called Growing Up Shaman, where I tell true stories about non ordinary reality from the perspective of a shaman. So, this story occurred back in March of 2012. As a backstory, I had just moved into my uncle's property because my aunt had just passed away, and I was going to stay in the second house on the property to take care of him. And so that's why I remember the exact date and time that this occurred, because it was the first weekend that I was staying there, and I was having difficulty sleeping. So I remember it was about 3 o'clock in the morning when I last looked at my clock, and I was reading a book, and I could hear the dogs in the backyard of my uncle's property barking. Now, these were farm dogs. We lived out in the country, so there was really no reason for them to be for them to be barking. So I went to go investigate to see what they were barking at. This property was like a 3 acre lot that was completely surrounded by a cattle ranch. We did have one neighbor on one side, but for the most part, it was just bare land, no trees or anything. And so I was able to see the whole property. And so I went to the backyard of my uncle's house, and I could see the dogs. They were all barking at the roof. I couldn't see anything on the roof, but the dogs were clearly upset about something that was on the roof of my uncle's property. But once I came out there, they seemed to calm down, and so I just, paid it no mind, and I decided I was going to take a walk down to the front of the property. Now, this property of my uncle's, my aunt had been buried at the front of the property. It was just a single grave, and the houses where me and my uncle lived were in the back of the property. And right between both of the houses, there was like a big moon tower type light that lit up half the property. And so the front part of the property that had the gravesite was the least lit up. And I felt completely and totally safe. So I decided I was just going to go take a walk down to the gravesite. And I get about halfway down the driveway, and I can suddenly see a black shadow go from the actual gravesite, cross my path, and go to the left of the driveway, and then disappear into the darkness. And I was like, what was that? My first immediate thought was death. And so I turned around and decided I was going back home. And so while I'm walking back to my place, um, within about a minute or so, I began to hear wings, huge wings. I remember thinking to myself that whatever had these wings had to have been at least 7 to 9 feet tall, because I had this distinct feeling that these wings that I was hearing was there to collect a soul. But there was nothing in my vision. I could see everywhere around me, 360 degrees, and yet there was nothing. There was no birds, and not that there's any bird that has a wingspan that huge. I mean, I heard three huge, like, whoof, 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 like it was making an effort to get off of the ground. And yeah, it just disappeared, and I just kept running. I mean, I never saw it. I just heard it. Well, I did see the black shadow right beforehand, but I never saw a winged creature. I just heard it. And I remember it just freaking me out, so I just ran back to my place. And so the next day I told my sister about it, because she was actually staying the night at my uncle's house the night before. And I told her about this death angel experience I had, and she goes, "You know what? I remember hearing those hearing something on the roof." And then she asked her husband, she was like, "Do you remember, we remember I tried to get you to get up and go check it out, see what was going on?" But he was like, "Oh yeah, I do remember." Yeah, I didn't want to go outside and check it out, but we heard something on the roof. And so I had confirmation from both the dogs and the people who were staying in that house that there was indeed something on that roof. And so we couldn't explain it other than that, although I did note the time and the date of when this happened because I knew deep down inside that this was some sort of omen of death, that I may not know about it now, but I was going to figure it out soon enough. And then come to find out a few weeks later, one of my really good girlfriends, she had lost her brother on that same exact night. And I just wasn't aware about it until like a month later. I had heard through the grapevine, not from her. And when I called her to confirm that it was true what I had heard, she she was like, "Yeah, that's what happened." And we were just all in shock because he was young. He was like in his 30s. And I remember asking her like, how come you didn't tell me, you know? I would have been there for you. And she said that she had told my ex-husband, and she just expected him to tell me. And she had known my ex-husband longer than she had known me, so it made sense that she would do that. But that's beyond the point. The point is that I told her that the next time that she was in town that we would hang out, right? So about a month later, I did actually get to hang out with her. Her and her husband were going to be staying at one of his friends who lived in the same tiny little town in rural Texas that I was living. And so I was like, well, I'll just, come and see you. And his friend, he lived in a trailer, and in the back of this trailer, he had a covered porch, and that's where we were hanging out and talking and whatnot. And I think at this point, her husband had her child in the house, and it was just me and her and my boyfriend and the dog on the porch. And she was standing at the top of the steps on the porch, and I was sitting on this little chair that had its back up against the wall of the trailer. And when my girlfriend decided she was going to go into the trailer to get some drinks, she took a couple of steps towards the door, and as soon as she did that, I noticed that she had something that looked like just like one of those Dementors in Harry Potter, except not as long. And it was like right above her head, like right here. And when she moved, it moved. And that's when I noticed it because it was completely black and it was nighttime. So it was perfectly camouflaged in the night sky. But when it moved, I noticed it and it just took off to the left. And I thought, to me, it kind of felt like it wanted to follow my girlfriend into the trailer, but couldn't. And I wasn't sure if it was because the porch was where I was sitting was all lit up, or if it was because I was sitting there and I could see it. But regardless, this thing took off to the left of the porch. And my dog saw this as well. And my dog took off after it and went to the left of the porch as well. And then when it got to the end of the porch, the both the Dementor and my dog went to the left and down to the left side of the trailer and then disappeared into the darkness that was on the side of the trailer. And my dog was stopped by the fence, so she couldn't continue to chase it. And she ended up just coming right back to me. But it was confirmation to me that it wasn't just something I thought I was seeing. My dog saw it too. And my boyfriend asked me what I saw, and I told him, but he said he saw nothing. But he definitely saw my dog go after it, so he was confused and didn't really know what to think of it. And whatever it was, it did not give me a good feeling. I remember having a feeling of like despair around that thing. And I found myself kind of afraid for my girlfriend. And I didn't want to tell her about this because it spooked me, and I felt like the last thing she needed was to be spooked as well. So I just kept this vision to myself. And then, but it kept bothering me for the days afterwards. And I ended up talking to a different girlfriend of mine and telling her what I had experienced and how I was conflicted about sharing this with the girl who it affected. And she encouraged me to just go ahead and tell my girlfriend. And she basically just said that if I had that vision, it was for a reason that I should share it. So I did. I called my girlfriend back and told her, you know, I had this experience the other night, but I didn't want to share it with you because of, your state of mind. And I felt like you were fragile and this was the last thing you needed to be hearing. But, I told her what I experienced. And I wasn't sure how she was going to take it, but she actually took it really well. She told me that she was so glad that I had shared that information with her because that night that they stayed at that trailer, she said she felt something actually touch her. And she was under the impression that it was her brother. And I totally disagreed with her. I did not think that that was her brother. I just feel like it was a spirit of despair, to be honest with you. And so it's kind of understandable that it was attached to her because she had just lost her brother, and totally unexpectedly. But, anyways, this story reminds me of a couple of folklores that I have heard here in South Texas, and it's very well known also in Mexico. There is folklore about a creature known as La Lechusa. Now, La Lechusa is the owl in Spanish. And basically, there's a belief of many people who live in the valley and in Mexico that you're not supposed to whistle at nighttime because they say it can call upon La Lechusa. And La Lechusa is this owl slash woman, shape shifting woman that supposedly collects children and alcoholics at night. And I never really truly believed in La Lechusa, but I can see how some of the myths and the beliefs around her were very similar to my experience because there was a problem with alcoholism in the house that the creature was standing on top of, but there was no owl or no lady per se, just a winged creature that I could hear, and there was no whistling involved. And yeah, I was okay. It didn't necessarily come after me like La Lechusa is known to come after people. And the reason I wanted to talk about La Lechusa a little bit was because this past weekend I went and I saw my stepmom, who's from the valley, and I asked her if she had heard of La Lechusa and if she had had any experiences with it. She said that yes, she had heard of it and that she had not had any personal experiences with it, but that her grandmother told her a story of when her and her uncles were when they had shot one with a gun, and that they had put it in a cage, and that in the morning that owl had turned into a woman that it had been injured. And so this was what I consider an old wives' tale, but it's something that people truly believe over there. And but honestly, I feel like this experience that I had is more in line with something known as the Morrigan. Now, the Morrigan is an Irish goddess, and she is the goddess of war and fate. And she's known as the Great Queen and also the Phantom Queen. She is known to collect souls, especially of warriors who have just came out of battle. In fact, in Ireland, warriors would claim to see a version of the Morrigan, either washing their clothes that were all bloodied right before they went into battle. And if they had this vision, it was meant to be an omen of death. But she was also known to be seen as a crow or raven or wolf or black dog. And she's also known to be seen as a cow and a black eel and a deer, both a stag and a doe. So she comes in many forms. And in fact, there's a character in Game of Thrones that reminds me very much of the Morrigan. If you remember the Red Witch, she uses magic to um, to change the fate of the kings in the land. But anyways, The Morrigan's color is red, and her stones are rubies, just like in the Game of Thrones. The Red Witch would wear a ruby necklace that changed her from being a beautiful young woman to an old hag, which is another version of her that she was seen as. So, anyways, I'm not sure what it was I experienced, but I do feel like those two experiences that I had were related, because the night that I had that experience with the death angel was the exact same night that my girlfriend's brother had died, and right around the same time as well. So yeah, that was pretty freaky, but another experience of an omen of death that I've experienced. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the story. I know it was kind of a long one. If you did, don't forget to give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and feel free to leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. All right, thanks for listening. Talk to you later. Bye.